WorldRider, the podcast edition. Podcasting. Who would have ever thought?
Welcome. Thank you for tuning in. Welcome to the Journeys with WorldRider Podcast. Adventure travel and around the world on a motorcycle. I'm Allan Karl, your host, and I really appreciate you tuning in here on the whatever your podcast platform is. It's Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, there's so many now. I'm just happy that we can get this content out. But speaking of that, and hell, it's not just content. That word is so overused, and I find myself falling into that trap. No, this is good stuff. This is the WorldRider Podcast. This is doing something, especially in a crazy pandemic. So this is not just content, no. Hey, today I don't have a guest, but it's been so long since any of us have done any traveling and doing a podcast with a guest that I decided that the time was to just check in with you guys. To check in with the subscribers to the podcast, new subscribers. If you haven't subscribed to whatever that platform is we talked about, go ahead and do that and definitely give us a review. So the WorldRider Podcast hasn't been very consistent here, and I apologize for that. They are challenging times we're living in, but yet I kind of see right now the light at the end of the tunnel. Today I took a walk like I usually do, or a bike ride, down to the beach and watched the sunset. And as I was walking, I said, I got to get on that WorldRider Podcast. I got to talk about the journey we've all been on. So that's why I'm going to just kind of check in with you, give you a quick little update of what's been happening in my life in lockdown and quarantine, and kind of end it with a positive light at the end of the tunnel kind of feeling of where we all can connect again. But how are you doing? And what are you doing? Are you talking about it? I'm going to be honest with you right now. I'm not doing very good, and I'm going to talk about it. I'm not doing bad, but for those of you who know me, I haven't traveled more than 50 miles from my home since February of 2020. That's more than a year. So what am I doing? Well, the pandemic hits, of course, and kind of locks us all down. I've spent quite a bit of time exploring my own backyard. It's given me that opportunity, and I'm going to talk about perspective in a little bit. But sometime actually back in May, when the cabin fever was really starting to kick in, and let's face it, we got locked down in mid-March or so, and May, that was 2 months, if that, right? To satiate my cabin fever and do something about the lack of motion, the atrophy that's going on in my brain and my body, I started a walking regime. Daily, just like I did today, down to the beach. I live only a half a mile, and I can do a loop. That's a really cool loop. It's about 3, I can drag it into 3.5, maybe sometimes 4 miles. So this is some of the most beautiful coastline in Southern California, as well. Then I started getting into body weight workouts because I didn't have any weights, free weights or anything, or fitness equipment here. I would usually go to the gym. I do have resistant bands and cords. I've got one dumbbell. It's only 15 pounds. But hell, I got into it. By the time August rolled around, I'd lost more than 10 pounds. As they say, the COVID 10 or whatever, 15. What were we all doing at the time? Eating and drinking. I pretty much, as I got into this regime, stopped eating bread, potatoes, pasta. I wasn't doing a whole low carb kind of thing, but those were some pretty dangerous carbs, I guess you could call them. I love them all, and I'm not religious about this. I'm not a fanatic. Oh, but hey, speaking of that, while I've got you here, I'm doing this podcast. It's about 8:00 at night on a Thursday, and I haven't had a glass of wine yet. I haven't had dinner yet. And I'm going to make dinner just as soon as I finish recording this. So I'm going to open up a bottle of wine. I'm going to share it with you. I would love to share it with you if you were here. So I don't know, maybe you're out walking, maybe you're driving, so you can't sit down necessarily as you're listening to this podcast and maybe have a glass with me, but we could kind of pretend, right? But what's really interesting about this wine I'm going to pour right now, it's white, it's chilled down, but it's not from a place that you normally think of when you think of wine. And for the last 2 years, I've been traveling in Eastern Europe, working on a new book, research for a new book, riding my motorcycle through. I'm up to about 80 countries now. Here. Okay, great. Okay, so it's not a wine region that is very famous, well-known or otherwise, but this is coming from Bulgaria. I spent almost a month in Bulgaria back in 2019. This is a wine from a winery called Orbelis, and it's a grape, right? Well, it's like Chardonnay or Cabernet Sauvignon. It's all organic, but it's a grape called Sandiski Misket. Sandiski Misket. And I'm not going to geek out on you about the wine right now, but I do want to, let's take a sip here. Oh, it's super aromatic. It's got nice floral qualities plus these nice tree fruit. There's apricot and even a bit of kiwi in here. It's just really sweet. But it's from Bulgaria. Who's drinking Bulgarian wine on a Thursday in March in California? I think I'm probably the only one. I mean, I don't know, but there's not a lot of it available in the United States, and I'm helping some people get a little visibility. I traveled over to Bulgaria. I was in Romania. I was in Moldova. I was in Ukraine. Then I went over to the country of Georgia, into Azerbaijan, then Armenia, to Turkey, back to Bulgaria, and then back to Greece. And right now, actually, as I'm sitting here sipping this Sandiski Misket, it's crisp, it's fresh, it's got a little bit of weight. So Sandiski Misket, real quick, I'll get the geeky stuff out. During the Soviet times, when Bulgaria was part of the Soviet Union, they were trying to find the best kind of grapes that would work with this very hot area down in what they call the Struma River Valley. It's close to Greece and Turkey and in southwestern Bulgaria. But they had a lab, and what they did is they do crossings to create new grape varietals. So they crossed a grape varietal called Muscat Blanc, which is it's very well known. It's grown in Italy. It's grown, just about everywhere. Muscats of all kinds of different kinds. But then they crossed this with an indigenous grape that's grown only in Bulgaria. It's the only place you'll find it, at least right now. And it's called Melnik. There's a town. It's named after Melnik. And it's called broadleaf Melnik. There's a couple different little varieties of this Melnik grape, which is a red grape. But they crossed it and created this white wine that's very aromatic, and I'm sharing it with you today on my first I'm sharing it with you on my first podcast that hasn't been a replay of some of the stuff I've been doing through the live stream. So anyway, thanks for indulging my quick little thing. I am writing a book. It's going to be called, tentatively, Corks, A Journey Through the Lost Vineyards and Forgotten Farms of Eastern Europe. And I've spent this 2018 and 2019 going through all the Balkan countries and the ones I just told you about that kind of are around the Black Sea, and meeting winemakers, chefs, restaurateurs, and just regular, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. And I've been capturing their stories, and it's really very interesting. You can look at this region as having been growing grapes and making wine for thousands of years. This goes back before Roman times. They've been making wine there. It takes a bit of perspective to change how we see things, to see things a little bit more clearly. Like, instead of complaining and thinking about what you've lost or missing during this pandemic, I've been focusing on what we can learn, what we're discovering about yourself, about others, about anything, maybe your hobby. Have you taken up anything new? What about you? What did you discover during pandemic? Have you read more books? I've been cooking and drinking a lot of wine, but in April, actually, I started, as many of you know on the podcast here, I started live streaming. I developed a live webcast called Journeys, Adventure and Discovery in the Time of Corona and Beyond. It's a weekly live stream event where travelers, entrepreneurs, vintners, chefs, musicians, authors, speakers, and those ordinary people living extraordinary lives all come together for an hour of storytelling, inspiration, idea sharing, and most importantly, connection. You can see all the replays, the video versions of it, at the journeyswebcast.com, www.journeyswebcast.com. Don't worry, all the links I'm going to talk about today will be in the description, so you should definitely check this stuff out. So those of you who are subscribing of the podcast know that I've repurposed some of the audio here on the WorldRider Podcast. And I will continue to do that because some people don't have the time to sit in front of a screen. But if you do, it's kind of cool because we do show video, we do show photographs, maps, and interactive things. And if you've never attended to one of those, please go to my website at worldrider.com/blog. And in the sidebar, sign up to be notified when we do a new one. They're usually Mondays at 3 p.m. in California, 6 p.m. in New York. And I've had amazing guests. Al Stewart, a multi-platinum award-winning recording artist of the Year of the Cat fame. I had a session musician, Phil Palmer, who has played with Eric Clapton, Dire Straits, George Michael. I mean, he's been on 5,000 records and 500 number one hit singles. So this is a guitar player, and he's living in Italy. That's an incredible one. But I've also interviewed motorcycle adventurers who are stuck down either in Uruguay or maybe in Bolivia. Another couple were in Spain. I've had winemakers. I've had chefs. I've had best-selling New York Times authors, Emmy-award-winning travel hosts like Ashley Colburn and Rudy Maxa. It's been fantastic. You got to check out the Journeys Webcast. If you want to just listen to it here, that's cool. But if you ever have a chance to join us in the live stream, you can interact and ask questions. It's a lot of fun. Anyway, those replays are also on my YouTube channel. You know, I'm going to be honest with you. I never focused anything on YouTube. Yes, I've always put some stuff up there, but more just on a lark. But it's kind of the one of those things I've began to learn and discover in the pandemic is that I've got terabytes of footage from all over the world that I've shot, never knowing what I was going to do with it. And I've been taking advantage of this time that I can't move and creating some great videos from places like, definitely you'll see places like Bulgaria, Croatia, all kinds of things. And it's given me kind of a new lease. If I can't really travel, I can kind of virtually travel by going back through that footage and living those moments again. So it's interesting. Go to youtube.com/WorldRider. Please subscribe because, you know, the other reason I'd love you to subscribe is because I've been putting, and it takes a lot of time, by the way, to do these videos, editing them and just trying to make something sometimes out of lemons. But nonetheless, this footage has never been seen before. But what I want to do is I want to get up to 1,000 subscribers on YouTube because at that point, I can apply for the YouTube Partner Program. And what does that mean? Well, that just means that I'm going to be able to be included in more search results. The algorithm will recognize my video content and people will be able to find me easier, meaning people that don't know me, that are not subscribed. And when I started this effort, or rather at the beginning of the pandemic, when I first looked at my subscriber count and I learned that, hey, somebody said, Alan, you got to get some more subscribers. I had about 90. Back in April. Now I have about 700, so I'm just 300 shy of that elusive magic YouTube number of 1,000. So thank you for subscribing. It helps. Back to not doing well. I'm not doing well, not because I don't and can't travel. I'm not worried about that. I find much more things, but health-wise, I got hit on June 13th with vertigo. And if you know anything about vertigo, other than it was a fantastic Alfred Hitchcock movie from way back, but it basically causes dizziness, spinning of the, balance. And you know what? As a motorcycle rider, that's the worst thing. So I haven't been on a motorcycle since June. One day sitting here, just finishing up dinner, watching a music program on the television, I got up, and just as I stood up, I felt uneasy, and the whole room started spinning around like madness, like a merry-go-round going out of control. I thought I was having an aneurysm or a stroke or something. I sat down, tried to assess the situation. When I got up again, I couldn't even walk straight. I walked straight into the door jamb. I lied down on the couch. The room started spinning. I could see the TV screen just going around the ceiling, around the walls. It was just going like madness. So I picked up the phone and I figured, and I live alone with a cat, actually too. Maybe we'll talk about that later. The room is spinning. I'm going crazy. I don't know what's happening to me. And this lady, the 911 lady, tells me that they're sending the ambulance out. And the ambulance came and I went to the hospital. They put me on stroke alert. Million CAT scans of me, took all kinds of blood, and I had to stay the night in the hospital. And when I left the next day, the spinning had stopped, and I was no longer nauseous. And I haven't been since, but I could barely walk. I kind of was like a shuffle as I walked down the hall with the nurse kind of helping me along. Now, since then, I guess you could say I improved for surely from that night, but I walk around most every day feeling a little bit lightheaded and dizzy, almost like a floaty, boaty feeling. And it's really unnerving. And I'm not complaining about it, but it's a fact of life right now. I have to do a ton of exercises. They call it vestibular therapy. It's a type of physical therapy. What happened is there's a lot of ways these things can happen. I don't want to bore you with that, but a lot of people that have had concussions or swimmers or surfers who have ear infections a lot, after a while, there are these little crystals that sit in a little vestibule or a little sac in your inner ear, and they can break away and get caught and trapped in one of the three canals, the ear canals. And when that happens, it throws your equilibrium off, and people can't see straight, are dizzy, can't walk sometimes. Some people can't get up off of the floor. There's a ton of people telling their vertigo stories on YouTube, if you can imagine. But this may have happened to me, this little idea. They call it BPPV, and I forget, it's benign something vertigo. Anyway, it may have happened to me, but as I've been going to a neurologist and started physical therapy, it became more clear that there was something bigger probably that happened. So they put me through some more tests and determined that on my right ear, I've lost about 30% of the activity of the vestibular nerve. And that kind of is how it kind of throws me off. And you have to do a bunch of exercises. The goal is to retrain the brain to compensate for the lack of activity in the right side by using the left side. And I have been more or less religious about this other kind of therapy I've been having to do, and trying to retrain the brain. I have some good days, I do, but to tell you, it's depressing. There are some mornings I don't even want to get out of bed because it's just this weird feeling. It's almost like you've had a hangover, a really light kind of hangover that you realize, oh, maybe I shouldn't have that one more drink last night. And you're a little slow and foggy in the head. That's what it's like. So anyway, there's a video I made of telling the story in a little bit more depth. And I also have, my neurologist has this crazy chair. When they have the crystal problem, they treat it in this chair that looks like a fighter pilot, and it spins you around upside down. I mean, it's like a amusement park ride. So I not only went on an ambulance ride, I've been in this vertigo chair a couple times. So check out the link below and you can learn a little bit more about the vertigo and how I'm treating it and what's going on. So that's why I'm not feeling good. That's why I'm feeling a bit down. I want to get on that motorcycle. My motorcycle, in 2019 in October, I had done that complete trip I just mentioned from basically Greece all the way around the Black Sea back to Greece. Left my motorcycle, the original bike, the one that's on the cover of my book Forks, in a garage in Athens. It's still there. Now, I do have another motorcycle. Actually, I have a surrogate. My bike is, for those of you who know, follow my book or the blog in the days, it's called Doc for Dakar because it's a BMW F650 GS Dakar, and I just call it Doc. So Doc is sitting in Athens, but the surrogate Doc that I had to get because I filmed that TV show for the Travel Channel, if you may remember, and I needed to have a bike that looked just like the one in the book and in all my other things. So we found one, and I bought it and fitted it up just the way that the original bike was, so it would look like the same bike. And that's what we use to film. I have it. It's sitting right here in my house, but I have not been on it, as I said, since June. It's gathering more dust than miles, and I just want to get back on it. But another thing I did, and I discovered here in the pandemic, is if I can't ride the motorcycle, what about a bicycle? So there's a guy that sells a bunch of bikes, e-bikes, down here, downtown Encinitas, near where I live. So I went down there and I went on a test ride, I guess, on a couple of these. I wanted to just see how it would affect, how my vertigo would affect my ability to ride. Now, a bicycle is a lot less weight. It doesn't go as fast. So I figured this might be a good addition to my vestibular physical therapy. So I ended up buying an e-bike because I can ride it. I ride it a lot. In fact, since I bought it, first week of August, I've put over 1,000 miles on this e-bike. It's a pedal assist, so it's velocity driven. It's a Series 3, they call it in California. It has a top speed of assist of 28 miles per hour. It's a Bosch Series 4 engine, I think 500 watts. I can't remember all the details. The bike is built in the Netherlands. The motor is built in Germany. And you got to pedal it in order to get it going. And there are 4 levels of assist. So it is so cool, man. It just gives you that little bit of boost when you're going up a steep hill. You need to get across an intersection before the traffic gets. So you got a little bit of extra oomph. But the velocity assist part of this is the more you pump it, the faster you're going to go. So it really is good for a workout, a little bit of cardio. I have a loop that I do. Sometimes it's about 13 miles, and I do that in about an hour's time, depending on stops and things like that. It's called a Gazelle. What the hell is the model? It's the Ultimate. I forget the model, but anyway, it's very cool. If you write me a note, I'll send you a photograph. Maybe I'll do a video of that sometime. But anyway, that's another thing I've discovered is just enjoying at least 2 wheels in some way and exploring my backyard on a bicycle, not a motorcycle. The other thing that I've done, and this I've been working on for a couple years, it's taken quite a bit of time, but I finally got it out just at the beginning of the pandemic. Those of you who have purchased or maybe you supported me on my Kickstarter campaign back in the day, my book Forks, A Quest for Culture, Cuisine, and Connection, 2 things have happened. It's in its 4th printing, and I printed up for the first time a new edition that's a softcover edition. So it's about $20 cheaper than the hardcover, but it has the exact same quality paper, and it's the exact same book, other than it's just softcover and it's cheaper. So it's $30 versus $50. That's the retail price. I don't know. Amazon always discounts things and that. But the other thing I did, everybody had always asked me to do a digital edition, to do maybe a Kindle or a Nook or, an ebook, an EPUB of Forks. And for those of you who don't know Forks is a coffee table book. It's big and it's heavy and it's got 700 photographs in it, and it just wouldn't look good. It just wouldn't be good on a Kindle or anything kind of grayscale. Sure, you could read the stories part of it, but you wouldn't see it. It's a very tactile kind of book. So I've resisted for years to actually make an ebook version. But at some point, I was having a casual conversation with some friends who are writers and authors, and one guy had taken one of his books, motivational kind of self-help book, and he broke it down into 6, I think it had 6 or 8 chapters, and he decided to take those chapters and release them as individual ebooks. And a light bulb went off in my head, and knowing that I'd had played around with the Apple bookstore. Used to call it iBooks. They just call it Apple Books now. And how those can have enhanced content in them. They can have color photographs. They can have video. They can have audio. So I thought, wow, what a great idea. To take Forks in all of its 270 or 80 pages and make it into one big ebook, it would exceed, no matter how much compression I did on all those images, it would exceed the, I think it's 2 gigabyte, maybe it's 1 gigabyte limit that Apple has for the Apple bookstore. So I thought, he's got a great idea. I'll take 35 chapters, one for each of the 35 countries I traveled, and that's how the Forks book is laid out, and make each one of those an individual ebook. So you'd get the story, you get all the photographs, and you get the recipe. That's the other thing. If you don't know it, the Quest for Culture, Cuisine, and Connection, I include at least one recipe, a local food, kind of the national dish for each of those 35 countries is included in that book. So not only can you feel the country by reading the stories of my connection and people, you can see the country through the color photography in it, but you can taste the country by cooking that recipe. And now, with these 35 ebooks on the Apple Bookstore, what I spent the last couple years doing, for each of those chapters, I've added new photographs because the layout is a little bit different, required more images. It also has a video or a slideshow or a story I'm telling, either in audio or video. Everyone has something that's never seen before, and the only place you can see those, they're not on YouTube, they're only in the iBooks. Every one of them. Check out Lesotho, for example, because there is a poem that I narrate, that I recite, about a 105-year-old man that I accidentally encountered on the side of the road while I was taking photographs. And that's kind of just one example. There's all kinds of content in every one of those there. I'll put a link in the description. And if you don't have the physical edition, the Forks, either the soft cover or the hardcover, I'm going to do something that I rarely do, but you can always buy these on Amazon. But if you want a signed copy, they're on my bookstore, if you want, or my little online store. They're on there at retail price. That's the way I have them. And usually Amazon is cheaper. So I don't sell a ton from my website, but those people who want more of a personal, I do it. But for those of you listening to this podcast, if you want to buy either of those books and have me sign it, and I'll also conclude some complimentary photo cards, these oversized cards of some of signature photos of mine. You can use them as a postcard, or they look good just on, you can frame them, you can, whatever you want to do with them. I'm going to do a 25% discount on both the hardcover and the softcover. That will bring the price, I think, about to where Amazon prices it. I don't know. They change it. Their algorithm changes it constantly. I don't watch it that often. The discount code is podcast. Just use the word podcast, all lowercase, and you'll get 25% off on your order. And I'll sign it, and I'll personalize it, and I'll put in some cards. You can have those for free. Okay, the very last thing I think I want to give you an update on is television. As I mentioned before, we did this television pilot for the Travel Channel, and it aired on the Cooking Channel. And sadly, after that, which was in March of 2018, Discovery Communications, the parent of Discovery Channel, bought Scripps. Scripps is the parent of HGTV, Food Network, and the Cooking and Travel Channels. They consummated their merger, and all the execs that have been working with me on this pilot for over a year, we worked on that for over a year, got shuffled over to the Food Network or over to Discovery Channel. Nobody was left on the Travel Channel that knew about me and my show. So it got kind of lost in the rumble of that shuffle, which is sad. So rewind a few years before that, I went with a film crew. The first television show I filmed was in China. It was a very difficult, strenuous, and stressful situation, and I won't get too heavy into that. But what happened is there's a bit of a shakeup with the people involved in the project at the end, that the show never completed. It was never completed. It was never aired. It was never edited. The footage was really not even seen. So Panayotis, who was a young kid, about 24 years old when we did that 4 years ago, who's doing a lot of great work in filmmaking. He's from Vancouver. He and I have gotten together and decided that we realize that now is the time, especially given the Asian American violence that we're seeing in our country at this time, and the anti-China rhetoric, which is nothing new for sure, but I want to show a different side of China because those of you who know me, when I travel, I'm traveling not to go and knock things off my bucket list. I'm traveling to meet people. That's my passion. The culture, the connection of people who are so different than me, but yet we realize we share all much more in common. So that's why, originally the show was called Border to Border. And it was, we kind of worked this out that it's about me going from one border to the next border, and then the next episode, the next season would pick up at the next border, and it would be a contiguous journey through a region. And each season would be a focus on that region, border to border. That idea is good. There's nothing wrong with the idea, but it seems it was more about me and my goal of checking things off of a border to border thing. So just like I don't want to check a bucket list, I don't want to just continue knocking things off. Go from China to Vietnam to Cambodia to Laos to Thailand, and that's good. You could still do that, but it's not about going from border to border, because that just sounds like you're just trying to get to the finish line. So we've changed the name of the show and edited it accordingly to The Places in Between, because that's where you need to stop. That's where you really get to know a country. It's not the top tourist places. It's the places in between. So this China episode we are working on, I've been trying to raise some money to get this thing edited, and we're going to put it up for free. We're not going to try to make money out of it. And hopefully this China episode of The Places in Between will work as a great proof of concept, a great sizzle reel, a great show reel that I can go to the streaming companies, the cable networks, and even the broadcast networks and see if we can't get this show back on the air and get out filming, particularly once this world is past COVID. There's going to be a lot of stories and a lot of people in between at the places in between that I'm going to want to meet and hear about. So be looking for that. I'll talk about it here on the podcast again. Maybe I'll even have Pan on the podcast. In fact, he was on back before we even went to China, or maybe when we got back. So if you look through the history of the podcast, I don't remember what number it is, but I interviewed him after we had done this China thing. So check that out. I am very excited. If we can't get a cable, streaming, or broadcast network to green light and basically finance this new show, maybe I'll go back to crowdfunding, go back to Kickstarter, and really do this, because I really believe it's a type of showing a travel show much different. First of all, being on a motorcycle, and second of all, focused on places that don't really get the light of day, but yet have interesting stories, interesting people. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. Let me take another pull off of this Sandiski Miskit from Bulgaria, or Belis. It's lovely. I've been talking so much, but I don't want to be drinking while slurping. We do that. That sound I make, by the way, when you're wine tasting as a professional wine, and I'm not a professional wine taster. I'm a wine blogger, so I do blog a lot about it. But you let aerate through your teeth. That way the wine opens up and you can taste the flavors more accurately. So it's not a gross thing, even though maybe it sounds that way. Anyway, the TV show, China, it's going to come out. We're hoping this summer. And then I hope from there, we'll be able to get back on the road. I'll get past this vertigo. I can actually get on the motorcycle and film and go to those places in between and get that new book finished. Corks, rhymes with forks. And then maybe the next one is dorks. I don't know. Anyway, hey, speaking of writing and books, I do occasionally write short form stuff, inspirational, aspirational, or just society, culture, commentary on Medium. If you've ever been to Medium, I've got a Medium page, I guess you'd call it. There's some good articles I've written there. I haven't used as much of time during this pandemic to do as much writing as I'd liked. I've been editing more video for that darn YouTube channel. But anyway, last month I wrote a great article. I think it's a great article. You tell me. It's called 13 Rules to Live By from a Life on the Road. And it's on Medium. And for each of those rules, I incorporated one of my original photographs that kind of help enhance that. It's a pretty cool article. It's these are nothing earth-shattering, but it's a good reminder, a little pinprick to say, hey, these are things you should be doing in your life. And that's That's something. I'll put the link again in the bio, but 13 Rules to Live By from A Life on the Road by Allan Karl. Hopefully you can go check it out. Hey, and on Medium, by the way, they have this notion of claps. So instead of likes like everybody else has or hearts, they have this thing called claps. And you can clap for any of the articles I've written or anyone else. And they give you 50 claps for each article. So, when you're in a audience watching a theater or you're at a concert or you just see somebody speak and, you clap. You don't just clap once. So give me 50. Give me 100. Half a hundy. Yeah, half a hundy. Anyway, that's on my Medium page. And hey, I'd love to hear from you. Drop me a note. Comment on this podcast, wherever your platform is, because it gets out to everywhere. And let me know what you think. If you have a recommendation for a good guest that I should interview on the podcast or even on the live stream webcast, drop me a note. I'm discovering a lot of new people. Originally, I tried on the Journeys Webcast to meet online virtually people I've already met all over the world. And as this show has grown, the Journeys Webcast is now in its 33 or 34 episodes. So there's really cool people up there. Go check it out. But maybe you know somebody that would be good to chat with. You heard what the Journeys Webcast is about, and the podcast is very similar. It doesn't have to be a motorcyclist. Hell, I just on the webcast there, I had Simon and Lisa Thomas of the Two Ride the World fame that were on this Monday. So that's already up on YouTube, and it was a lot of fun, man. We went 2 hours. It's a long one, but man, you got to hear these guys' stories. Anyway. Thank you for tuning in. This is the Journeys with WorldRider Podcast, adventure travel around the world on a motorcycle. I'm Allan Karl, your host. Tune us in soon or on the Journeys Webcast live stream. I look forward to seeing you somewhere or everywhere.